معرفة.
Let us discuss the concept of wakala here, right? Now, this is an important concept, and let us understand the definition of the wakala. So, the term wakala literally means preservation. Now, legally, wakala can be defined as a delegation of one person, that is the principal, for another person as an agent to take his place in a known and permissible dealing. So, meaning to say, the principal can appoint another person as his agent and then ask him to do certain activity on his behalf. So, this is basically the concept of wakala, the relationship between principal and the agent, and the responsibility given by the principal to the agent to represent the principal and do certain activity. So, in case of sukuk, the same thing happens. The issuer SPV, for example, appoints the obligor as wakil or an agent to do certain activities. So, this is a very common concept of wakala which is used in Islamic transactions, and in sukuk in specifically this is also used. Now, let us briefly understand how IOFI defines Sukuk Al-Wakala. So, what IOFI says is that Sukuk Al-Wakala represents projects or activities managed through an investment agency, right? So, the issuer of these certificates acts as an investment agent, okay, meaning to say the wakil. So, the obligor generally becomes the wakil. The subscribers are the principal. So, the subscribers, the investors, right, pass on the liquidity to the issuer SPV. Issuer SPV represents the investors. So, issuer SPV in a way is the principal. Then issuer SPV appoints the obligor as its agent to perform the activity and manage the portfolio and pass back the returns to the investors through the issuer SPV. Let us understand some of the key features of the wakala sukuk, right? Let us go through that. The wakala arrangement and the wakala asset must be within the boundaries of Sharia principle, right? So, this is the first main principle, right, which needs to be understood. The second is that the subject matter of the wakala agreement, that includes the duration of the wakala, the type or the criteria of the assets that the wakil can select, the fee payable to the wakil for the services, etc., must be specific and clear. So, again, one of the main teachings of the Islamic commercial law is that things have to be clear between the parties. So, that is also which needs to be understood very clearly. The third, the principal amounts from the underlying financial assets should never be used for service coupon payments under the sukuk. So, what needs to be, the principal amount should not be done, but the profit which is generated needs to be given as coupon. So, this is another important point which needs to be made clear. The third is the wakala fee can be combined with the incentive fees payable at maturity based on the overall performance of the sukuk assets. So, these are some of the points which needs to be considered while structuring the wakala sukuk. Now, let us discuss about the mechanism of Sukuk Al-Wakala. Sukuk Al-Wakala, as we have discussed with regards to the definition, wakil means agent, wakala is an agency concept. So, generally this structure is used when there are more than one structure in the sukuk. So, for example, there were multiple sukuk issuances where there is a combination of murabaha and ijara. So, for example, there is a corporate which comes and he says that I do not have assets, $100 worth of assets. I only have assets worth $51, for example, and $49 you can do a murabaha for me, okay, so that all my assets are not locked in the sukuk. So, generally Sukuk Al-Wakala is a combination, and sometimes, for example, when we were advising the sovereign of Malaysia, in that sukuk there were Sharia compliant shares, there was real estate, and there was a murabaha. So, there was a pool, and many sukuks of even IDB, they are also having a pool. In Arabic this is called as qulta, meaning to say a combination where you have an ijara asset, you have a murabaha, you have sometimes shares, right, sometimes you have other Islamic structures as well. So, when there are multiple structures involved in a sukuk, right, that sukuk generally is called as wakala. Sometimes structure is only one, but the relationship between the issuer and the obligor is not of, for example, lessor and a lessee. So, for example, there is a portfolio of real estate assets. This portfolio of real estate asset was bought, and then it was not leased to the obligor, but the obligor was made a managing agent, okay, or a wakil to manage that portfolio of real estate assets. So even in this case, it is called as sukuk, right, where there is a portfolio which needs to of real estate assets which needs to be managed, but it was not leased back to the obligor. Meaning to say, for example, if the obligor has multiple buildings and these multiple buildings are already leased to some third parties, right, and they want to use this asset into the sukuk. So you cannot do a sale and a lease back because the properties are already leased to third parties. So what you could do is that you can do a sale and then you can appoint the obligor as an agent to manage this real estate portfolio, and whatever the profit generated, then give it to the investors. So even in Sukuk Al-Wakala, let us take the same example. There are 3 stages. One is the stage 1, which is the inception stage, where $100 were pooled in, and this $100 were passed to the issuer SPV. Now the issuer SPV with this $100, for example, buys real estate assets owned by the obligor for $51. So it buys $51 worth of real estate asset, and it creates another murabaha, meaning to say it buys commodities worth of $49 and adds a profit of, for example, 2.5 and sell it to the obligor, right? So in this case, you have a murabaha for $49, you have an ijara of $51. So, and also the profit, which is $5, for example, you have split it $2.5 for the profit in the murabaha and $2.5 as rental for the ijara, meaning to say the real estate asset. So now then the obligor is appointed as a managing agent or a wakil, right, to manage these 2 things. One is the murabaha, the other is the real estate, okay. Now in terms of the murabaha, the only management is that because once the commodities are sold to the obligor will again sell the commodities to a third party and get the cash of $49, right? So that $49 they will invest in their business venture and things like that. And for the real estate asset, again, is managed by the obligor because it needs to be managed under the wakala arrangement, okay. And now what it does is that the profit, which is $2.5, and the rental, which is $2.5, trickles down as the periodic distribution amounts to the issuer SPV, and from the issuer SPV it goes to the investors. So in this structure, let us go back to the last stage. So we have done the first stage, which is the inception. We are done the life. So during the life, the profit in the form of profit on the murabaha and rentals will pass to the investors on a periodic basis. The last stage is in case of maturity, in case of default, or in case of early payment. In all these scenarios, what will happen? The obligor purchases the underlying ijara assets, right, for $51, and the obligor undertakes to pay the due amount, which is $49, okay, back to the issuer SPV in case of 3 scenarios, as we have said: in case of maturity, in case of default, in case of early payment, if they want to pay and go out of the transaction. So in a nutshell, we have also concluded the Sukuk Al-Wakala. So just briefly for you to understand the 3 stages: the inception, where the liquidity is raised; the life of the sukuk, where the profits are paid, right, and then the last stage, which is the maturity, default, or early payment, where the principal amount, which is $100, is paid back to the investors. So this is how the sequence of the Sukuk Al-Wakala works.
معرفة